Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Lady Chow Fung for another episode of Wuxia Weekend. We are 2 members short tonight, so we're going to try to hold down the fort and have a discussion on the film Long Road to Gallantry, a 1984 movie directed by Tang Tak Chung. It stars Kenny Ho, Kara Hui, and Rosamund Kwan. And this is part of our Kara Hui month. This is the last Wuxia Weekend official episode that we're doing for Kara Hui, but we will have a special episode over the weekend as well to cover a secret movie that Lady Chow Fung and I have in the works. But this film, it's basically like, I would just describe it as a really sort of full-on wuxia film that has pretty much all of the stuff that you kind of expect from the genre. Everything from the clan feuds to the heroic protagonist to the love triangle to amazing techniques and loads of weapon choreography and kung fu. I don't know, Lady Chow Fung. Before we get into the plot of the film, what was your reaction to the movie? Did you like it?
I liked it. It had a typical early 80s feel, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good little story. Of course, I love the love triangles, but you're right. It does have all the typical wuxia things that you look for. So it was great. Yeah,
I really enjoyed this one. I only got to see it once before the podcast, so I probably won't be able to give us an in-depth overview of the plot. But I really found myself enjoying it an awful lot, largely because it was so much of it was like really standard wuxia, but all the stuff that I really like from wuxia. It just had all of the flavor that I expect when I see a good wuxia movie. And I think that the acting especially really helped kind of carry it even further. So, just would you agree that it's a fairly simple, straightforward kind of storyline? It's not overly complicated, right?
No, it's not overly complicated at all. I wouldn't even say they're twists and turns, but there are some things that you just can't quite figure out right away. Don't lead right down to the path you think it would. But it's a really good movie, and it's not convoluted, and there aren't too many characters to get you all confused. And you do see some other big stars in it that you kind of might not notice right away.
Yeah, and it's basically, if I had to describe the plot, and again, this is just going off one viewing, so it might be a better way to describe it, but I would say it's sort of, there was this big feud over a manual 20 years ago that resulted in, the death of one of the sect leader's wives and the death of another sect leader's wife, and this long-standing grudge between these sects. And one of the sect leaders, Master Lung of Thunder Gang, goes on to become this great villain in the martial world, and the other sect becomes this sort of righteous sect that seems to uphold the wuxia ideals, but the characters are the next generation. And so one of the characters is the daughter of the villain, even though she doesn't know it because she's raised by the dragon sect. And the other character, played by Kara Hui, is the daughter of one of the people that was killed by the villain, and so she's seeking revenge. And then there's the Kenny Ho character, Du Mengfei, who's kind of thrown into it, but it's not really clear what his background is. And the three of them sort of have to deal with the aftermath of this long-standing grudge. And it's I don't know, it's kind of, I didn't even particularly care where the story was going. I was more interested in following the characters and watching the love triangle unfold and seeing how they reacted to the situations that they were in.
Yeah, I totally agree with your summary of the plot. Kenny Ho was kind of just thrown into it. I guess he was sent out by his master because he was finished his learning, so he's been secluded for a while. So now he's out in the world on his own and supposedly knows right from wrong, the righteous from the villainous, and he gets thrown into this situation where he has no idea what end is up, and which girl is righteous and virtuous and which girl is villainous. So it takes some good little twists and turns with the three of them.
And what I liked about it too is like a big part of the storyline initially is that Meng Fei he's sort of going around. The backstory here is that the Thunder Gang is kidnapping young women, and in particular one type of woman that they want to kidnap is are members of Dragon Sect, because the villain is looking for his daughter. And Kara Hoi's character, Lee Sai-nan, who wants revenge against the villain, she uses that to her advantage and tries to get captured with the aim of pretending to be his daughter so that she can get close and killing him. And Du Meng Fei is constantly going around rescuing her every time they try to kidnap her. And it's kind of played for humor, and it's sort of like a nice little twist on something that you see a lot in wuxia movies. But I don't know, I like the way that they did that, and I like how that sort of where that leads those characters by the end of the movie, because you really wouldn't expect it to, you wouldn't expect it to get to the point that it does, and it gets there quite efficiently, I think. But I don't know. What did you think of that part of the movie?
I like that part of the movie because Meng Fei is trying to be the chivalrous hero that he is, but he has no clue of why she wants to get captured. So he tries to rescue her every time he thinks that she's in danger, and then he kind of ends up in a little danger himself. But I liked that, and I liked how they're at odds at the beginning, but somehow they end up really liking each other by the end of the movie.
Yeah, and it's almost like the movie is really kind of, by the end, a love story between him and her. And you have all these, you do have a lot of other interesting details. Like she has her uncle who was there at the scene when this fight over the manual happened. He's been sort of planning his revenge for a long time, and she's his instrument. And this puts her in a situation where, when it comes to light that the Rosamund Kwan character is the daughter of the villain, where he forces her to go out and try to kill her, and so there's just, I don't know, there's just, again, it doesn't feel, it's not like a straight linear plot. It's just like all these interesting chemical reactions going on in the movie, where this character is thrown into a situation and you're sort of curious how it's gonna play out. And I don't know, it had a lot of like really interesting sites and locations, like I don't know what the proper term for it is, but the Snake Fortress, the underground lair that Kara Hoi's uncle lives in. It is I thought that was like a marvelous sort of set and design, and
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, once you got in, and it had hidden traps also, which were really cool. There weren't a lot of them, but there were definitely enough to pique your interest.
But also the Thunder Gang headquarters had traps and stuff too. It just had a real adventurous feel. Why don't we talk about the individual characters, and then I want to get into some of the plot details. So, I mean, Meng Fei, he's the protagonist. He's one of the protagonists, but we've kind of already covered him. I'd like to talk about the Rosamund Kwan character, who's Mu Wan who starts out as, she's a member of this dragon sect, which we've established is a righteous sect, but towards the middle of the movie, she discovers that her real father is Master Lung, who's this ferocious villain. He's this is probably one of the most wuxia villains I've ever seen, actually, just in terms of how he carries himself, and so she's sort of torn, but. Again, she's one of and this is sort of a trope of the genre, she's one of these daughters of an evil master who is herself basically a good person. And so I was just curious, what your feeling on her character was and on Rosamund Kwan's performance.
I think Rosamund, she does a really excellent job. She just has something sweet about her. This isn't the only movie I've seen her in, but she just has something sweet, and you can't imagine that she would ever make some kind of good evil villain in a movie. I don't know, but just the fact that she had an evil father and she kind of had to choose, but she stood up for what she believed in and chose the path of righteousness even after she finding out who her father was.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say her performance was really, really good. And I kind of thought that Meng Fei would end up with her at the end.
Yeah, because she and it seemed like that's what his character wanted until sort of duty kind of intruded, maybe. But we could talk about that when we get to that plot point. But she actually played a similar character in Swordsman 2 as well. That was a very similar type of role.
Yes.
But very different from this one. I think number one, Swordsman 2 is not filmed in the same way. This is very set heavy, Shaw Brothers, and that gives it a certain feel. And Swordsman 2 is a lot more sort of atmospheric, filmed outside kind of a movie. And the tone is just completely different. But I agree. I really liked her performance here, and I thought that she was an interesting contrast to the other characters, because you have the Kara Hui character, who again, it sort of played to a lot of Kara Hui's strengths, which is, she's really good at the I don't know what you say, like intensely aggressive characters. Do you know what I mean? Like this is one of those types of characters for her. She's very,
but she was kind of bratty in this one. At the beginning, she kind of reminded me a lot of who is it, Candy Wen Er's characters, because she did a lot of pouting.
Yep.
And I thought she was going to throw a couple fits there for a minute.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, there was definitely a bratty quality to her character. I would agree with that. But it's still that sort of aggressiveness. Like I would still file bratty under aggressive, like that.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And she's also the character who is sort of dutifully trying to fulfill her uncle's plans of revenge. And I think over the course of the movie, what you see happening with her is these emotional attachments that she develops with the other two characters, kind of keep interfering with her ability to really do that properly, because she has to go and poison the Muwan R character, the Rosamund Kwan character, and initially she puts the poison in her tea, but then she
knocks it away,
and
so that she could see that the poison was in there. Her character does go through a serious internal conflict. She wants to kill and take revenge for her parents' death, but because she didn't know that the daughter was this girl that she's come to like and be really good friends with, it's just so much emotion inside of her.
And I like that she decided to have a duel with her. Like she still was trying to honor her uncle's directive, but she wanted to do it the right way. And then obviously the Kenny Ho's character comes rushing in and puts a stop to it. What about the Chief Leng Tien Lei character? What'd you think of him? The bad guy.
I liked him. I like the guy who plays him. I call him Elvis, because his long sideburns always remind me kind of Elvis. But it was kind of different to see him in such a villainous role. And I think he did a really good job in it.
Yeah, I was surprised, actually, because that actor, I think his name is Lung Tien Sang, he's in a lot of Shaw Brothers movies, and he oftentimes is in roles that are important, but you might not always notice as much as some of the other performers. And here he really impressed me with his ability to swagger the way that he needed to for this character. Like it was this was definitely a swaggering villain, in my opinion. And,
oh yeah, definitely. And he kind of reminded me of Michael Chan Wise character in, well, just in the look. Remember how he changed? Is it in oh geez, we just watched the movie. T Lung broken, the broken piece that goes in, and then he has that transformation at the end.
The
Deadly Breaking Sword.
Yep.
There we go. I was getting there. It kind of his look in this movie kind of reminds me of Michael Chan Wise look in that movie, but without the streaks and the full on beard kind of thing. I don't know. Just
yeah, no, I would agree because he's got like a white head of hair, but he's got if I recall, his beard and stuff looked like it was still dark, and so it seemed like he had this unnaturally whitened hair, and his costuming was just very. I don't know. He just. I mean, he seemed like a cross between that and the Iron Palm sect leader in Brave Archer. Like it's like that style of villain is what he reminded me of here.
Yes.
Like just a good cape wearing villain who's laughs frequently and doesn't really seem to have much compunction about being a bad guy. But he does have this additional layer that's interesting of having the daughter, which kind of, and having the wife who was killed in that fight over the manual. It gives him a little bit more depth. But he's basically kind of like he's a he's one of these villains who enjoys being a villain, it seems. And but also it's kind of interesting that by the end of the movie, like they set him up to be this real big villain, but then by the end, it's not really even clear who the bad guy is because the Lee Sai-nan character, her uncle, is kind of a nasty guy. He's the guy who sort of lives in this fortress that has a snake motif running through the whole thing, and when Lee Sai-nan brings Du Mengfei to the underground complex, he traps him and he's about to have him killed. He's just so focused on revenge, he's willing to dispatch people, without a thought. And in the very end of the movie, the situation that emerges is he seems to agree that he will spare the Rosamund Kwan character, and he even agrees to spare her father, provided the father comes to his headquarters and kowtows to his great ancestors. But then he plans a secret attack in order to kill Master Lung by having this it's like an arrow trap that's going to hit him in the back of the head, and it's set up so that is exactly when he kowtows, his head will be in the right position. He can hit him in his weak point. And but then Master Lung is also planning on sort of not staying true to the agreement, and he tries to use his icy palm attack, and I don't know, I just sort of like the whole double cross sort of thing that was going on there.
Yeah, I liked how they were trying to out evil each other. But the three main characters were so naive that they believed that, these two were going to actually end up making amends with each other, so that they kind of played into each other's hand. But yeah, Jason Pai Piao did a really wonderful job in this villainous role. I think he makes a good villain when he plays one.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And he's funny because he's one of these actors that it took me a long time to notice him. Like he just sort of, you would see him in these movies all the time and you would know him by face. But it took me a while to really, appreciate his performances. And I think here he's just he's I don't know, I wouldn't quite classify his character as a villain as much as just like he's kind of like
he's corrupted by evil.
Yeah, he's like a corrupted hero. His revenge-soaked brain is just so focused on revenge that he doesn't see the evil that he's committing as a result.
And he's willing to sacrifice his niece to get his end.
Yeah, yeah, and he's and all of these virtues of the martial world, like the filial piety and all these stuff, they just become tools for him to help achieve his revenge. Do you know what I mean? He's sort of exploiting the relationship that he has with his niece in order to get her to. I mean, she's not capable of defeating Master Lung. Master Lung is extremely powerful, and it's and so he's sort of. It's weird because in a lot of these movies they will invoke the virtues in order to violate them in a way. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of what he's doing. But what did you think of the palm technique? I thought, because again, it's a feature of the genre. You have these the manuals and so his ability, I believe, is called, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but I think it's Jujuan Force, which basically freezes people, and it looks horrible. Like you get hit with it and then you like slowly freeze to death, basically. And the uncle basically has the antidote to it, which becomes an important plot point. That's why Meng Fei had gone to the uncle's headquarters in the first place. But what did you think of the palm technique?
I thought it was pretty cool, but I do want to back up. Is there were two manuals. One had the actual technique in it, and the other one had the antidote in it, so that when the two families dueled over it, and the one family was killed and the one wife was killed, and the uncle came in, the two manuals got separated, and one went with each daughter. So one went with Kara Hui's character, and one went with Rosamund's character. So you don't get a complete picture without both of the manuals. So basically, they're both trying to get both of the manuals.
Yeah, that's true. And the way that Rosamund Kwan's character ended up with Dragon Sect is the Masters of Dragon Sect showed up at that, at that battle to fend off the bad guy, and then the female master ended up adopting her essentially with and concealed her knowledge of the of her parentage.
Because Jason Pai Pia was going to actually kill her when she was a baby, but he was stopped. And
I want to get into there's some stuff I want to talk about with that, but before we do, I just did in terms of the technique, what did you think of that as sort of the central lethal technique in the movie?
I think it's a good idea to have a frozen palm where wherever you're hit, then it starts to spread out over your body. And he looked cool doing it with all his hand motions and everything, kind of get his chi up so that he could actually do it full force. And it's like, and you need the antidote right away. Otherwise you die. So it's a very, I wouldn't say efficient technique, because it does take a couple minutes for you to die, but it's a good movie technique.
And what I liked about it too is that once Meng Fei had been hit with it and he started to suffer the effects, I found it very easy to imagine what the effects felt like, because he was just cold. I mean, it looked like he had a really bad fever or something. He was chilly. And it's really easy to put yourself in their shoes. Sometimes the techniques will do things like the person will turn purple and cough up blood, and I won't really have any idea what that feels like. Do you know what I mean? So this one, I thought, like, I can appreciate what he's going through. I can get a sense of what this is supposed to feel like. So I kind of like that. It was a simple thing, but it worked. In terms of I guess before we get into the parentage topic, I did want to sort of step from the palm technique to the fighting in general, because the fighting in this I thought was somewhat distinct, and I was curious what you felt about the fight choreography and just the use of fighting in general in the film.
I thought the use of fighting in the film was really good. I didn't find it to be extravagant, where, sometimes in wuxia movies, the moves are just so unbelievable that that they really couldn't take place. The only one that would have not really been able to take place was the frozen palm. But I think the other fighting was really good. It was very realistic, and it was more grounded than usual in a typical wuxia film.
Yeah,
I thought.
No, it was. They did still have some of the lightness kung fu. I quite like the wuxia style of fighting, so I enjoy it when it's in movies. What I liked about this one, though, is, number one, the performances were so impeccable. Like, usually there are moments in the movies when you see people's... The moves just don't look right at a certain moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, usually you catch glimpses of a the human imperfection. Here they just did a really good job of making either through the editing or through just rigorous training and performance, getting the performances to all look really on point. And the choreography was quite good. All the actors just seemed spry and like they knew what they were doing, and the movements were thoroughly engaging. There was this I thought there was a really nice balance of kung fu and sword play, so that I got a really even mix of both of those things, and it never felt like they were half-assing either of them. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you'll get a movie where like the kung fu's great, but they pick up a sword and it's like they're not even really trying.
Right, or vice versa.
Yeah, and this felt like they were fully committed to all aspects of it. I thought that Kenny Ho did a great job. I was really impressed with his physical performance. I was obviously impressed with Kara Hui and Jason Papiao and everybody else, but Kenny Ho kind of surprised me here, and
Why?
I don't know. I just thought that he looked really amazing for some reason. And here I was like, oh, he's really like, a lot of times one of the things that I really focus on with actors when I watch them move is their footwork, and I found his foot movement to be particularly good. I'd have to watch it more than once to really weigh in any more than that, but I was, on one viewing, I was like, oh, I was really impressed with Kenny Ho in this. But I quite liked all of the action in the movie, and I thought that there wasn't a scene that had anything that I would criticize really in terms of the martial arts. It was all nice, thrilling, fun martial arts fight choreography, and that's kind of how the whole movie felt to me. It just felt it felt like a really good, solid evening of entertainment where I got all the stuff that I want, and then and then it wrapped it up in a really nice way, which we'll get to. But I don't know, did you have any other thoughts on the fighting, or did you maybe not agree with me 100% on the Kenny Ho thing?
No, I agree with you with Kenny Ho. He did a good job.
Yeah, no, and I know he's I'm trying to think of what I have seen him in. I know I've seen him in other things, but I think it's mostly like late 80s stuff. But it's just here I really enjoying his performance physically. But what was it? The other thing I wanted to talk about, the whole deal with Muwan being kicked out of Dragon Sect when her real parentage comes to light. I was curious what you felt about that, because they're pretty heartless with her.
Well, yeah, because they knew what her parentage was. I guess they didn't think that it was going to come back to bite them in the butt. But I thought it was pretty mean that they were going to sacrifice her to save themselves.
Well, and in a way, she's a character that leapt to mind with her character was Luke Skywalker. I kept thinking of Luke Skywalker and how he's the son of the main villain in the movie, and I was saying, gee, what would happen if Yoda had acted this way towards Luke? Like how terrible would that be? I mean, it's a different genre, obviously, but there's so much connection between those two that I thought that it was striking just how they're it was just heartless. It was just just this nice, really like just a really good person being kicked out of the sect like that.
And she didn't do anything. I mean, I would understand if she was doing something that was in support of her father, but she had already kind of denounced him by that point. She didn't want to have anything to do with it, and you could tell, but they were kicking her out anyway.
Yeah, no. And then, I mean, and she sort of does do the thing where she, you know, she, you know, there is a later scene where her and her father have an exchange. She does kind of try to reason with him a bit, I suppose. But she's basically, she's clearly not being turned to his side. She, you know, she's, at most, she's reluctant to kill him because he's her father, and she at least acknowledges that. But, like, and that's one of the things that leads sort of the Kara-Hui character to kind of, you know, initially be a little suspicious of her. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the hyper efficient turn into melodrama at the end. You know, there's this. I mean, it wasn't like out of nowhere, because Kara-Hui's character and Kenny Ho's character, there's this scene when he first goes into the Snake Fortress, which is just what I'm calling the place. It's not what it was called in the movie. And in order to get to save him from being killed by the uncle, she tells the uncle that he's her husband, and they have to pretend to be married, basically. And so, but it's not a real marriage. But then by the end of the movie, and I do want to talk about the final scene leading up to this after we discuss this, but when all of the carnage is done, Rosamund Kwan has been accidentally poisoned by one of Kara-Hui's darts, and Kara-Hui has been, unbeknownst to everybody else, mortally wounded by the icy palm technique, and so Meng Fei asks her to give him the antidote to the dart, and she only agrees when he agrees to marry her, and so he marries her, and then we see them in their marriage quarters, and they're all dressed up like they've been married, and it becomes clear that she's dying, and it sort of turns into like a very tender moment, but it's very efficiently done. And so I was curious what your thoughts were on that part of the movie.
Did not see that part coming. Yeah, it was very efficiently done. It was a smooth transition, and she doesn't reveal anything until the very end. Like, she's about to die, and then she tells them that she's going to die. And that was really smooth. You would think that would be in like an awkward kind of moment in there, but this was what I thought, is that he was begging pretty much for the antidote and would do anything to save her. So not Kara-Hui's character, but the other
Kwan's
character. So that, you know, because he was in love with her, and, you know, he was just going to marry her to get the antidote and ride off into the sunset once his real love was healed and saved. But and then, you know, we know that Kara-Hui was hit by the icy palm, but the other two characters don't. So, you know, that the audience knows that she's going to die.
Yeah. So,
you know, those two are going to Meng Fei and Mu Wan-er are going to live happily ever after. But then there's a twist.
Yeah, and also in that scene, I started to think, oh, maybe he really did love the Lee Sai-nan character. Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe he just was being protective of Mu Wan-er because she was a good person. But perhaps all of the stuff, because he and Lee Sai-nan did have like a really full relationship in the movie. They had a you know, there was a history there, and I thought that I could see maybe he was more in love with her and he just didn't show it until that moment. Or it's possible he was just, you know, being dutiful to her because he had married her and he decided that he was going to, you know, be dutiful in that situation. But either way, it leads to a scene at the end where they're at her graveside, and it's clear that he has no intention of being with the Rosamund Kwan character after that. That he, you know, seems to want to honor the memory of this woman who he was married to very briefly. But the reason that and you have to forgive me, Lady Chalfung, because I'm going to talk about Doctor Who, but it's relevant. To me, this is an example of how to do this idea of condensed storytelling well. it 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 very quickly moved into this super melodramatic scene, but enough groundwork had been laid that I cared about all of the characters when that was unfolding. And I wanted them to have a happy outcome, and the fact that they weren't going to have one, that it was going to end tragically, was moving as a result. There was a season of Doctor Who where they made the whole season all about condensed storytelling, and to me it was an example of how not to do condensed storytelling. And you do it by loading a movie or a show with all kinds of backstory that comes so quickly that you can't develop any emotional attachment to the new characters that they're introducing. And here I thought that everything, this is, what was it? It was an hour and 28 minutes or something. It was a very short movie, at least the version we saw. And we saw it on the Prime version. And, but it still managed to, I still managed to emotionally connect with all the stuff that was going on, even though it was happening really quickly and they were introducing things very fast. And so to me, that's a sign that the, even though it was hyper efficient, the techniques they were using were really effective and were working for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I had an emotional connection with all three of the main characters. And I had an opinion about all of the characters. Yeah. You know, so, and it happened very quickly. Maybe an hour and a half tops, you know, so it wasn't very long, but there was so much meat in that short amount of time that you felt connected to the people that were in the movie and you cared about what happened to them. So when there wasn't that happy ending, it kind of, well, for me, you know how not getting the happy ending can sometimes leave me like kind of deflated, but I was not deflated. I was satisfied because then it's really revealed who I think it reveals who his true love is in the end of the story. For me, it was kind of wavering back and forth, and at each scene you never knew really who it was.
It was still uplifting. Like, it ends in, you know, obviously spoilers if you haven't, you know, we spoiled it already, but spoilers, she dies, and but she dies in a way that, like you say, it's sort of, it either shows who his true love was, or at the very least it shows something about his noble character that is, you know, leaves an impression on you. And so you just, you know, you have this sad thing that happens, but it's also kind of counterbalanced by I don't know, you get to see a good dose of humanity, and it's and so it's not all bad. But yeah, I think the ending in general I quite liked, and that final scene, the final battle, I thought was really excellently done. And I felt like, again, I don't know what the title was supposed to be in Chinese, because oftentimes when we do these movies, the titles are totally different in the Chinese than in the English version. But I felt like the title "Long Road to Gallantry," which the whole movie I'm like, well, what's this? What does this mean? What is the Long Road to Gallantry all about? I felt like that became very apparent in the final battle, and I don't know if you agree with that, or if that, you know, crossed your mind, but you know, I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, I never crossed my mind. It kind of
Meng Fei, at the start of the movie, he is told, go out, protect the poor, and uphold justice. He's basically meant to be a gallant hero from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And so this is his long road to gallantry. And by the end, he's clearly a gallant hero. He because at the start of the movie, he's kind of got a playful, arrogant quality that is like maybe the one part of his personality that doesn't feel quite heroic. Do you know what I mean? Like he's kind of tormenting the Karahui character to a degree in a playful way, but he's still kind of not. He's a little bit disrespectful to her at times. Do you know what I mean? But by the end of the movie, he is dutiful. He's a dutiful husband to her, mourning by her gravesite. And so I feel like that's the long road to gallantry sort of culminates in that final battle, if that makes sense. It's
yeah, it does. It does.
And so I thought it was a nice, I don't know, when the title sort of makes sense to me at the end of the movie, I like it. And and I like that, you know, it's kind of a somber take on what it means to be a gallant hero. Like by the time he gets there, he's just gone through all this terrible stuff, and even the good, you know, the good things that happen to him are so fleeting.
Right.
So that's kind of what I liked about it. But in terms of the fighting, what did you think of that last battle?
I like the last battle. Again, there was so much going on, but sometimes when you have a lot going on in a final battle, it can be very chaotic, but it was easy to follow. And it was important for the audience to see that Kara Hui was hit by the icy palm.
Yeah.
But the other characters didn't, which I thought was a very important element that didn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, because they slowed down the frame rate at that time. It was like a slow motion hit, and so you really pay attention to it.
And you know, sometimes things that are important can be lost in the chaos of so many people fighting, but not here. I like the way that they did it. Yeah,
because I find the older I get, the harder it is for me to always notice everything in a fight too. Like I think maybe my eyes are just getting old. And the thing I appreciated about this movie was it's if you feel at all impaired in that respect, it was very easy, I thought, to follow all of the visual elements. There was nothing confusing about the fights. They weren't simple. They still had a complexity to them, but you could clearly follow every beat of the fight, and the costuming was so well done that all the characters really stood out, and you knew who was who. That's another thing I liked about this movie, is the costuming, the color palettes were just really nice. I'm not a color person, so I don't quite know how to express this, but I liked like the green that was going on with Lee Sai-nan's uncle, and I liked the blues that a lot of people were wearing, and the reds.
I liked the orange.
Who had the orange? I don't remember the orange quite as much.
Wasn't it oh, hold on. I gotta get back to the right page. I thought it was Chief Ling Tian Lei that had the orange in one of the scenes. It was kind of like a shimmery orange, or was that red?
I don't remember. I remember seeing orange. A lot of reds, but I'd have to go back and watch it because my memory's a little bit shoddy on the color front. But I do remember being very similar to how I was very impressed with the Holy Flame and the Martial World colors and the Buddha palm colors. But this was different because this felt more like really solid colors. Do you know what I mean? They weren't. Mm-hmm. It wasn't candy. It wasn't glittery. It was just solid, but nice combinations of colors. But yeah, I don't know what's your overall take on this film? What would you say? If somebody was asking, should they watch this and where it ranks, what would your statement be?
I quite enjoyed it. It had some surprises with the characters. I mean, the roles that some people played in the movie. I enjoyed everything about this movie. I think you should definitely see a good film in its own right. It's different because, there's not a lot of comedy in it. And that would have been really out of place. There were some, cute little moments because of Meng Fei's, I guess, lack of being out in the world. Kind of made some of the situations a little funny. But yeah, it's a really good movie.
In terms of the movie itself, it's a good movie. It's like I thought it was a pleasantly surprising film. And I would definitely say if you like wuxia, it's worth watching. That was an amazing movie, where it's a really solid evening of wuxia entertainment. It's a good Kara Hui performance. Kenny Ho does a really good job in this one, and Rosamund Kwan plays a really good character too. And the villains are fun. It's just got a lot of really fun, enjoyable stuff in it. And you've seen wuxia movies and you're hungry for a good wuxia film, this is definitely something worth watching. And like I said, I was I was pleasantly surprised by this film. I guess my overall emotion during the movie was just delight. I just had a delighted reaction to the film. Just something that might be good to watch with a group of friends as well. But yeah, so again, the movie is The Long Road to Gallantry. It's a 1984 film, and it's one of the later, later Shaw Brothers movies. And it's directed by Tang Tak Chung. And yeah, so also, I keep forgetting to mention this at the beginning of the podcast, but if you enjoy listening to this show, if you want to help us up our game, you can support us on Patreon. We have a Patreon page, which we always link at the description below.
It's a good movie. Watch it, and bring your popcorn because it definitely is enjoyable.
Okay, and so we'll be back on next month. We're going to be doing Black Magic as our theme, so we're going to be doing a lot of Halloween related things, and I think we have some nice movies lined up. We're still hammering out exactly what films we're going to watch. So we'll be back on next week, and it's going to be Halloween month, so we'll be doing that as a theme. And feel free to send us your suggestions for themes you'd like to see. We always like to hear from people. Feel free to send us feedback, questions, thoughts. If we can, we will raise them on the podcast. And until then, we will talk to you later.
Thank you, Brendan and Xiao Feng, for your review of this movie, Long Road to Gallantry. It was filmed back in 1984. Even though it's a really old movie, but it's still a great movie to watch again during this pandemic. Now, I've watched this movie myself many times, and I must agree with you both that this was a really great movie, a more realistic movie with no animation effect like what we have today, but they had great fight choreograph combined with great performance by the actors and actresses. Kinney Ho, Rosamund Kwan, and Carrie Hui were the main character. They all did a great job. You know, Rosamund Kwan and Carrie Hui, they were already more well-known as they started their acting career a few years prior to this movie. Kinney Ho, however, this was his second movie he started. His very first was The General, and where he played the main character, the main general that helped Vietnamese people fight against the France, and later on got killed by his own Chinese people. Well, anyhow, he starred alongside with Rosamund Kwan in that movie, so of course their chemistry were great already. And if you watch Kinney Ho movie later on after this one, he played a more serious, righteousness, heroic character. But in this movie, he was more playful and a little bit childish at certain time, which is very much like himself in real life. Not many people, including his fans, know much about Kinney Ho in real life or even imagine what his real life outside of acting would be. Well, I can tell you, he is one funny, playful, easygoing, and very down-to-earth kind of guy. And not to mention, he is extremely smart individual. I was very lucky to be working for Shaw Brother at the time, so I was able to be close to these actors and actresses, and I saw how they were behind the scene, where a lot of people don't get the chance to do so. And I noticed during break time or whenever they're not playing their part, I see some of these actors and actresses, they would pull out their script and start learning their scripts, learning their lines, and practicing. While Kinney Ho, he was totally different. He started joking around, making people laugh. He loved to laugh himself. Very talkative, taking pictures and signing autograph with fans. He was super friendly, and he has been friendly all these years. Okay, and I saw Kinney Ho. Sometime he would read his script once or twice, and then he would memorize them, and he doesn't have to keep repeat over and over. And that's why these directors, they love him for that. Yeah, I was very amazed by his intelligence and his memorizational skills. For Carrie Hui, she was very serious when it comes to acting, but Offset, she's kind of quiet at time. But when she's around Kenny or Rosamund Kwan, she would open up more and laugh a lot and was joking with them. Actually, all three of them really get along well. Kenny Ho was a very gentleman. He would always give them food or snack to eat and really know how to take care of these ladies, and vice versa. They were great friends. One thing people don't know is that Rosamund Kwan's father was part owner of Shaw Brothers, and her mother was an actress as well. So she is more well known at that time, more than Kenny Ho and Kara Hui. And Offset, a lot of people can see Rosamund Kwan really like Kenny Ho, and can also see Kenny was very close to her. So many people said they would make a great couple. However, lots of billionaires had their eyes on her. And I remember one guy interviewed Kenny and asked him if he would woo Rosamund. Kenny laughed it off and said, "I wouldn't stand a chance. I'm not a billionaire. She's dating a billionaire businessman. I don't dare to go after her." So then they asked Rosamund Kwan about Kenny Ho, and she also laughed it off and said, "Kenny is so handsome and super nice guy. However, he just started his career. He's probably not ready to settle down to have a family yet, and I won't keep him from advancing his career. So we will remain great friends for now." And that's how I remember a lot of magazines and newspapers and journalists would do reviews and write stories about them. But at the same time, imagine if they were married and have kids. Their kids probably will be very handsome and beautiful little kids. Rosamund Kwan did marry that billionaire businessman shortly after. However, their marriage didn't last long. It was only lasted about a month or two, and then they filed for divorce. And then later on, she dated another billionaires. Actually, she dated a few billionaires. But today, all three of them are retired. We don't know much about Kiri Hui these days. Rosamund Kwan is now single but super rich. And of course, Kenny Ho is now a billionaire businessman himself, even though he's retired, but he had opened up many businesses and maintained his physique until today. So, but I know all three of them still remain great friends until today. Thanks again for David and Chao Fang for this review, and we're looking forward to your next movie review.